Well, the environment was on the mind of many world leaders and CEOs at the recent Bloomberg Global Business Forum in New York City. CGTN's Terrett sat down with Michael Bloomberg, the founder of Bloomberg LP, as well as the UN Secretary General's special envoy for climate action. In a wide-ranging interview, they discussed climate change as well as Bloomberg's health initiatives during his time as mayor of New York. John began by asking Bloomberg what his message is on climate change.
The message is very simple. The Earth is warming. There is no question about it. You can see it in ocean temperatures and ocean height. You can see it in droughts and in floods and in ice caps melting. You can see it with farmers. I was in Iowa and they were complaining the Canadian farmers are starting to grow the same crops as them because Canada's warmed up. It is happening, number one. Number two, it could get to a point that is cataclysmic for the world where everything dies. And number three, even if you don't think there's any remote possibility of that happening, the consequences are so great if things go wrong that you cannot sit around and do nothing. You have to put this at the top of your list. We've got to do something about stopping the warming of the Earth.
But what are the difficulties of getting that message out, bearing in mind?
Oh, I think the message is not the problem. The message is you're going to have to make a sacrifice, and so am I.
But there are still plenty of climate deniers out there. You know
that.
Yeah,
there's plenty of people that think the Earth is flat. That the moon landing took place in a Hollywood studio, so you're always going to have that. I think we've gone from it doesn't exist to it's a commie plot to it's not man-made to you look out your window and the flood is coming up and you say, wait a second, what are we talking about here?
Now, we're speaking at the Bloomberg Global Business Forum for 2019. Did the climate dominate this event?
Less so.
Less?
Less so. It was still a very big deal, and 2 years ago, this is the third year. But it has become much more central because stockholders are asking corporations they invest in, what are you doing for climate to mitigate climate change? They're asking what they can do at home to mitigate climate change. They're asking their politicians, are you or have you ever been in favor of whatever? It is because they turn on their television and look out the window and they see things that never happened before.
Are you jazzed by or in any way surprised by the fact that young people are really now taking the lead in this issue?
No, I'm not surprised. Young people have an energy and a desire to make the world better. I think the danger is young people tend to underestimate how complex it is and how little government can force people to do things. So they say, well, pass a law to end climate change. That's not going to happen. And there's an awful lot to be said for experience and accomplishment when you pick your leaders. So I wouldn't just rush to pick a young leader. There's nothing wrong with being young. I was young once, so were you. I'm not sure I'd go back to those days, but I'd like to go part ways back would be okay. No, I think we should encourage young people to go to man the barricades, if you will, and to be a voice for the future, because you and I aren't going to be around when they're around. So they have a legitimate interest in this.
We must also talk about your health campaigns. There's been sugary drinks, smoking, and now vaping. How do you choose these campaigns, bearing in mind that when you choose them, you always alienate somebody, because somebody loves fizzy drinks, somebody loves smoking
absolutely.
And vaping.
Well, you look for a problem, and then you look to see what causes the problem. So if you look at Mexico, for example, it's the most obese country in the world. Okay, why? Look, the full sugar drinks are sold cheaper than bottled water, and everybody drinks bottled water there because the public supply is not any good, or not very good. And that's what you should do, get people to stop having fewer sugary drinks if you want to stop the obesity. Look at the cancer rate. If you want to stop that, tobacco. And now vaping, which is conceivably worse than tobacco. That's the thing. The tobacco companies advertise vape. It will help you stop smoking. And if you believe they want you to stop smoking, you're a very naive person. That's the way they make their living. But vaping gives you more nicotine faster than cigarettes do. And all the evidence says nobody uses vaping to stop smoking, or virtually nobody. People that vape are entering a world of an addiction habit every day, more and more and more. And the pressure from the public when they look at their high school kids and junior high school kids who are doing it even in school and the teachers don't know how to stop it. They're calling the congressman. That's why even Trump said, I've got to do something about it.
I was in a taxi the other day, and the taxi driver, you came up in conversation.
Uh-oh.
And he spent 10 minutes railing against almost everything you did.
Oh, that's good. Did he vote for me?
He wasn't your biggest fan.
Let's
put it that way.
What was his problem?
But he said, you know what? Mike Bloomberg is a great man. I said, why? You just spent 10 minutes having a go at him. He said, because Mike Bloomberg bans smoking in public restaurants and secondhand smoke kills. And for that alone, Mike Bloomberg is a great man.
At the beginning, the restaurant owners were violently opposed to it. And when I finally explained to them, and it's hard to get a message out, that people sit, they eat, and then they sit there and have a cigarette. Wouldn't it be better if they didn't have the cigarette and emptied that table so you could put somebody else there? You don't make any money from selling cigarettes. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. And by the way, incidentally, look at the waiters and waitresses and chefs and busboys. They're going to sue you someday for an unhealthy work environment. Oh, and today, every restaurateur would tell you it was the best thing that ever happened to them. Their business went up, their employees are happier, because it makes some sense. So the public votes with their feet, and the public isn't stupid. They know what's good and bad for them. I know the cab driver might not like bicycle lanes. I know he might not like other kinds of cabs. I know he might not like this or that. But when it gets down to his health and his family's health, the guy was with me, and maybe he did vote for me.